The story begins far from the battlefields of Vietnam, in the cotton fields of Texas. Roy P. Benavidez was born on August 5, 1935, in the small town of Cuero, to a poor Mexican father and a Yaqui Indian mother. Life was already a fight before he ever saw war. By the time he was 8, both parents had died of tuberculosis. He was taken in by relatives in El Campo, Texas, a town that smelled of soil, sweat, and survival. The boy who would one day become a legend began as a barefoot orphan, picking cotton, shining shoes, and carrying heavy loads to keep his younger relatives fed. In school, he was quiet, shy, stubborn, and fiercely proud. But poverty pushed him out before he reached high school. Work first, he would say. Dream later. He joined the Texas National Guard at 17, hoping to earn enough to help his family. Later, he transferred to the U.S. Army, the one place that didn't care about color or poverty as long as you could fight, bleed, and obey. He became a paratrooper and soon after a member of the U.S. Army Special Forces, better known as the Green Berets. It was there that he learned the 3 things that would define him: discipline, endurance, and loyalty. In 1965, during his first tour in Vietnam, Benavidez's life changed forever. While on patrol near the Cambodian border, he stepped on a landmine. The explosion sent him flying. When he woke up, his spine was crushed, his legs useless. At the hospital, the doctors told him bluntly, "You'll never walk again." For most people, that would have been the end, a tragic footnote in the war. But for Roy, it was just another battlefield. Every night, after the nurses left, he dragged himself out of bed and across the floor, clawing at the walls, forcing his legs to move. The pain was blinding. He'd pass out, wake up, and try again. He prayed. He cursed. He refused. After nearly a year of agony, one morning a nurse walked in and found him standing, trembling, drenched in sweat, tears in his eyes, but standing. "I told you I'd walk again," he whispered. And walk he did, straight back into war. The sun hadn't yet burned through the mist above Loc Ninh, Cambodia, when a team of 12 Green Berets, the Lost Patrol, was inserted deep into the jungle. Their mission: confirm the presence of enemy troops. They found more than they bargained for. The team was soon surrounded by a full battalion of North Vietnamese soldiers, nearly 1,000 men. Within minutes, the radio crackled at base camp. "We're pinned down, taking fire from all sides." Back at the forward operating base, Staff Sergeant Roy Benavidez was attending Mass. He heard the call and froze. Those were his brothers. Without hesitation, he grabbed his medical bag, his knife, and a rifle, and jumped on the first rescue helicopter. The pilot shouted, "Are you armed?" Roy tapped the knife at his belt. "I'll find a weapon when I get there." As the helicopter descended, gunfire erupted from the tree line. The LZ was hell. Smoke, screams, the sound of automatic fire ripping through the air. Benavidez leapt from the aircraft and hit the ground running. Almost instantly, he was shot, once in the leg, once in the face. Blood poured from his mouth, but he kept running. He reached the trapped team, dragging the wounded into makeshift cover, shouting orders, returning fire. Bullets tore through the trees. Grenades thumped the earth. He sprinted back to the landing zone, carrying one man over his shoulders, dragging another by the collar, pulling a third by the arm. Then the first helicopter was shot down. Smoke, flames, screams. Benavidez didn't even hesitate. He ran back into the jungle. For the next 6 hours, Roy Benavidez waged a one-man war. He directed airstrikes and medical evacuations while fighting off advancing NVA soldiers. He was shot again, in the stomach and shoulder. A grenade exploded near him, peppering his back with shrapnel. Still, he refused to go down. When his rifle jammed, he used an AK-47 he found near a fallen enemy. When he ran out of bullets, he used a knife. At one point, he crawled through a hail of bullets to rescue the downed helicopter crew, all while dragging a wounded American through the mud with his teeth clamped around the man's jacket. By the time the second extraction chopper arrived, he had been shot 5 times, bayoneted once, and hit by grenade fragments from head to toe. He loaded the last of the wounded, then turned around, bleeding, barely breathing, to make sure no one was left behind. As the helicopter lifted off, Roy finally collapsed. He was covered in blood, barely conscious, whispering prayers. A medic checked for a pulse. Nothing. They laid him beside the dead and zipped the black body bag. But as the doctor began closing it, a wet sound splattered across his face. Roy had spat blood to show he was still alive. "Hold it," the doctor yelled. "This one's not dead yet." Roy Benavidez had done the impossible. He had literally refused to die. He spent more than a year in the hospital. 37 wounds, bullets, shrapnel, bayonet, and burns. Doctors removed part of his lung, but they couldn't remove his spirit. When asked later how he survived, he said quietly, "There was only one word in my mind: brotherhood." When he first told his superiors what had happened, they didn't believe him. It sounded too incredible. One man saving 8, killing scores, surviving 37 wounds. The paperwork was lost. Witnesses were scattered. For over a decade, he lived quietly, unrecognized. Then one day, a former comrade, one of the men he saved, came forward and confirmed every detail. The Army reopened the case. And on February 24, 1981, in a packed White House ceremony, President Ronald Reagan placed the Medal of Honor around Roy Benavidez's neck. Reagan turned to the reporters and said, "If the story of Roy Benavidez were a movie script, you would not believe it." Roy didn't retire into silence. He traveled across America, visiting schools and military bases, telling his story not as a tale of glory, but as a lesson. He spoke about courage, sacrifice, and faith, about growing up poor and never quitting, about how every one of us has a war to fight, sometimes inside our own body, our own mind. In every speech, he ended with the same words: "I'm proud to be an American, and I'll always be a soldier." Sergeant Roy P. Benavidez passed away in 1998 from heart failure, surrounded by his family. He was buried with full military honors at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio. On his tombstone, beneath the Medal of Honor insignia, the words read simply, "Master Sergeant Roy P. Benavidez, U.S. Army, a true American hero." But those who knew his story, those who walked away from the jungle because he didn't, they say something different when they speak his name. They say, "He's the man who refused to die."